We hatched eggs inefficiently in Gen 4 for over 10 years. A couple years ago, it was revealed that certain dates modify encounter rates and egg hatching speed in certain Gen 4 games. And when BDSP came out, it was confirmed to exist there as well. Since then, additional details have slowly been figured out, including the caveats involved and the dates that work across all Gen 4 Pokemon games. Ultimately, this led me to hatch an egg on every single date possible in order to verify this information. In this video, I'll break down the hidden mechanics of hatching eggs in Gen 4 and how you can hatch eggs as fast as possible. Now, I don't think it's a stretch to say that breeding in Pokemon is complicated, so we'll be focusing entirely on the egg hatching aspect of these special dates for this video. The special dates I mentioned earlier also impact Pokemon encounter rates, but I won't go into that as it isn't super interesting for most playthroughs since the rate change is marginal. If you want me to make a video on these topics later, definitely let me know in the comments. Anyways, before I explain the mechanic, first I should go over how egg hatching actually works in Gen 4. Let's start with the stuff that's widely known. When an egg is being created, the game figures out which Pokemon will hatch from it and how many cycles are required. An egg cycle is just a counter, usually set to 255, that ticks down with every step you take. The amount of egg cycles an egg needs to hatch varies from Pokemon to Pokemon. In Generation 4, the Pokemon with the lowest amount of egg cycles to hatch is Magikarp at 5 cycles, while the highest amount of egg cycles possible is 40. This is shared by many different Pokemon like Chansey or Gible. Technically, certain legendary Pokemon have egg cycles that can go all the way up to 120, but you would have to use glitches or cheats to create a legendary Pokemon egg. A quick note here is that Generation 4 games start your egg cycle count at 0, so a Magikarp egg would actually take 6 cycles to hatch instead of 5. Once you take enough steps to finish an egg cycle, the remaining cycles for all eggs in your party decrease by 1. Once you go through all cycles for an egg, the egg hatches. One caveat here is that if an egg completes all of its cycles and there are other eggs in your party, those other eggs do not have their current cycle processed. This means if you have 5 Magikarp eggs in your party and try to hatch them all at once, your first egg would hatch in 6 cycles, the second would take 7 cycles, and so on. This means your last egg would require an additional 1020 steps compared to the first egg. I did a quick test to show this. I gathered 4 eggs and biked around until the first one hatched. No other eggs hatched despite them all having taken the same amount of steps. The next egg hatched 255 steps later, then the next one hatched 255 steps after that, and then the last one hatched 255 steps after that one. Unfortunately, there's no way around this, and you have to deal with this 1 cycle delay if you plan on hatching multiple eggs at once. Of course, the way everyone knows you can speed up egg hatching is by using a Pokemon that has Flame Body or Magma Armor. If either of these abilities are present in your party, every 255 steps would reduce your egg cycles by 2 instead of 1, effectively doubling your hatch speed. The last thing to mention is that your step counter isn't necessarily tied to a specific egg. This counter is running in the background even when you don't have an egg. This is hard to notice because every time you receive an egg, your step counter gets set to 0, so your egg will hatch when expected. This does matter though and is important to know. This means that if you are halfway through one egg cycle and receive a new egg, that half of a cycle is lost forever. Here's an example that shows it in action. I received an egg, then took 398 steps. This means the egg has already gone down 1 cycle since it's over 255 steps and is 143 steps into the next cycle. So let's just receive an egg and then hatch our old one. Under normal circumstances, a Magikarp egg takes 1,530 steps to hatch. In this case, it actually hatches at 1,673 steps, which lines up perfectly with me taking an additional egg 143 steps into a cycle. In order to not have this slow down your egg hatching, you would have to take eggs exactly when your current egg cycle completes, in effect every 255 steps. Alright, now that you're an eggspert,
oh brother, this guy stinks!
Let's get into the main subject of the video, the special dates. After source code for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum was leaked back in 2020, people discovered that there were special dates in the code that marginally impacted your encounter rates. This has minimal impact on any playthrough that isn't doing RNG manipulation, but more usefully, we also discovered that certain dates had increased egg hatching speeds. Here's how it works. I mentioned previously that an egg cycle is 255 steps in Generation 4. However, on these special egg hatching dates, the egg cycle goes down to 230. This brings down the steps required to hatch a Magikarp egg from 1530 to 1380. In the more extreme cases like Chansey, this reduces the steps required to hatch from 10,200 to 9,200. Just playing on these special dates can speed up your egg hatching by about 10%. When combined with Magma Armor or Flame Body, you can hatch eggs as quickly as possible. One huge caveat here that isn't mentioned much is that this mechanic has time travel protections. I touched on it a bit in my honey tree video, and I'm currently working on a much more detailed video on time travel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. But here's what you need to know. If you change the date on your DS and then load a save, the game places certain restrictions on you for approximately 24 hours. One of these restrictions is that the egg hatching or encounter modifying dates have no effect. If you're wondering why it's approximately 24 hours instead of exactly 24 hours, the reason is that it's the same type of timer I described in my honey tree video that can sometimes get delayed due to menuing or entering battles. You can check out that video for more information. So, in order to sidestep this, you should change your date to the day before one of the special dates, save, and then pick the game up the following day when it has naturally rolled into the date you want. Now, the dates that work for Diamond and Pearl also work for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. These dates include Junichi Masuda's birthday, international holidays like Valentine's Day, Japanese holidays like Hinamatsuri, and the release dates for Ruby Sapphire and Diamond Pearl. There's also 2 dates that don't signify any important event, but work to speed up egg hatching. Also, year is irrelevant for these, so just make sure your month and day match. The dates that work for Platinum are a bit different. Halloween, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day no longer work. To replace them, the dates for the Pokémon anime premiere in North America and Pokémon Crystal's release are used. Confirming all of these dates work correctly was pretty trivial, as the Sinnoh games have a step counter app built into the Pokétch. All I had to do was hatch eggs on these dates to confirm the step count lined up where it should. Now, I mentioned earlier that these dates were initially found due to source code leaks for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I assumed somebody did try to check the HeartGold SoulSilver dates once the other games' dates were confirmed, so I tried searching online. The only source I was able to find was a chart on Bulbapedia's egg page, added August 2024. Quick aside here, I did all the research for this video right before the huge Game Freak leak that happened this past month. Apparently this leak did contain HeartGold SoulSilver source code as well, but I haven't talked with anyone who has looked at it. The source code would contain the exact dates that work in HeartGold SoulSilver, but you'll see in a bit why I didn't need to look for this video. It doesn't change the outcome of my research, but I wanted to mention it since I figured people would ask. Also, I do not condone the leaks, and I'm not encouraging any of my viewers to look at them. Please do not zap my channel, Nintendo. Now, looking at the chart, we can see that any date that worked for Diamond, Pearl, or Platinum seems to work in HeartGold SoulSilver. I decided to test all these dates myself to confirm that the information was accurate, as I have a natural distrust of unsighted information stemming from 20 years of reading about Muse being under trucks. One immediate issue with testing these special dates in HeartGold SoulSilver is the lack of a Pokétch, or more specifically, the lack of a step counter app. After thinking about it for a bit, I realized I could use max repels to effectively be my step counter. Each max repel lasts 250 steps, so if I continuously max repel and count how many I use, I can easily figure out if the sped up egg hatching is in effect or not. With this method, I quickly tested all of the HeartGold SoulSilver dates listed on the chart and confirmed them to be accurate. Unfortunately, I knew I could not stop there with my tests. Without multiple sources to confirm, one could easily think that whoever came up with the data just tried all the Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum dates, saw they worked, and called it a day. I knew I had to test every single month and day combination possible, a total of 366 days thanks to leap year. Normally, this would take a full year of real time to test thanks to the time travel protections that I mentioned earlier. However, I have some tricks I used during my speedrunning days and was able to sidestep the protections in order to test them much faster. I changed the date, hatched an egg, noted how long it took to hatch, and repeated it 365 more times. All in all, this only took me 8 hours instead of the entire year. After doing all of this testing, I confirmed that the chart was perfectly accurate. All of these Sinnoh dates work in HeartGold SoulSilver and no other date does. Even though I didn't find anything new, I'm glad I spent the time to thoroughly confirm things before I further spread the information on my channel. I'm not sure why Game Freak decided to copy the dates from both games and combine them, but it does mean that HeartGold and SoulSilver have the most fast hatching dates possible out of all the Gen 4 games. Okay, so we now know everything there is to know about egg hatching in Gen 4. How do we utilize all this information and hatch eggs as efficiently as possible? The first 2 steps are obvious. Get a Pokemon with Magma Armor or Flame Body, and make sure that you're on one of these special dates that speeds up hatching. And make sure you didn't time travel straight to that date, as it won't work. The other key point is to take eggs only when you have just completed an egg cycle. Otherwise you will lose all current step progress on a current cycle. This is fairly easy to do in the Sinnoh games. Just have the step counter app open, reset it when you take an egg, and don't take another egg unless you have recently passed an interval of 255 or 230 if you're on a special date. Optimally, you do this on exact intervals of 255 or 230 to lose 0 steps, but you can't always control that. This is a bit trickier on HeartGold SoulSilver since you don't have the step counter app, and the extra effort of using repels or counting steps manually isn't really conducive to hatching quickly. Instead, you can use eggs hatching to determine if you have recently finished an egg cycle. Eggs hatch only when you hit that 255 or 230 step count. So if an egg is close to hatching and you're about to grab a new one, consider waiting until it hatches to grab that egg. Another trick you can utilize is only moving along a predetermined path that you know the exact length of. As an example, this is a pretty common up and down path people use when hatching eggs, since it's a long stretch of straight movement and is right next to the daycare. This exact path is 85 steps from top to bottom, which conveniently equals exactly 255 steps when you've completed it 3 times. So if you strictly take this movement path and count how many times you go up and down it, you can roughly estimate your step counter. It's extra work, but if you want to go as fast as possible, it might be worth it for you. The fact that this existed for so long and wasn't known until a leak is so wild to me. Why did they add this time-saving feature to the game and not advertise it in any way? The Battle Hall fan feature I've talked about in my previous videos was noted in official guidebooks, but this much more useful feature wasn't. I guess in theory it could be a fun surprise to see your eggs randomly hatch faster, but most people wouldn't notice it even if it was happening to them. The decrease in steps is very minor, and you can't easily count steps in HeartGold SoulSilver. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised given the content of my other videos investigating Gen 4 stuff, but still. I'm sure some people, maybe even some of you watching this video, noticed that happening in your youth and you just brushed it off or didn't think too much about it. Regardless, that's everything you need to know to hatch eggs optimally in Gen 4. While I didn't find any groundbreaking new information in this video, a lot of this stuff is really not widely known, so I hope you were able to learn something. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos on niche Gen 4 topics, please be sure to like and subscribe. I have some really weird and bigger projects in the works, so I would really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.